You know, years ago at Esalen, when people would come and they'd want to do workshops, and everybody would want to do workshops, one of the criteria we would have is we would say, what's the humble origins of your idea? Where does it come from inside? And if they would say, well, my sister had polio and that's why I've learned this body work, or I was an asthmatic and that's how I learned how to breathe now, then we would book them. We would put them in. And if they didn't have a humble origin to what they were doing, like Uncle Harry, or in my case, like my father, we said no. We passed. Because this kind of work, this dimension, has to come at first, I think, from some personal place, some place where it really matters, in your own soul.
Yeah. I think in the old days we used to say otherwise it was sort of head tripping.
That's right. It was head tripping. It was head tripping. So the humble origins count a lot, certainly with me.
You've been on a passionate quest yourself.
Well, I had this father. You had Uncle Harry. I had my father, and my father was a surgeon in the 40s and the 50s. And in those years there was no chemotherapy, there was no radiation, and most of his patients died. So I got very used to the fact that my father would be very tired some mornings because a patient had died, and he had stayed up all night with them. And every time a patient died, it seemed that they gave him a gift for me, either a stuffed animal or a book to read. So he would be very tired, there'd be a present at my breakfast table, my breakfast plate. And then I would say, well, where did they go when they died? And he would say, they went someplace else. It made a lot of sense that they went someplace else. So I learned that when people die, they go someplace else. They die in some very generous state, because they all bought me these wonderful presents as they were dying. And this was not anything to be afraid of. And I grew up very much with this wonderful belief. My father sat these people as they went someplace else. Wonderful gifts came out of these experiences, and I was very comfortable with death, very comfortable with people dying. And then a best friend died. And he didn't die the way my father said he would. It was a horrible death. He was terrified. He got very mean. He was my best friend of 20 years. And he died clutching money because he was worried that there wouldn't be enough money.
On the other side?
Anywhere. There was no other side. This was it. And I thought, my father was wrong. It was all wrong. It was all a myth. It was daddies talking to children. It wasn't real. It wasn't very true. And then another friend died. And he died in a state of grace. And he died excited. And he died happy. And he died going someplace else. And I thought, oh, now that's the difference. What's the difference between these two men? Because they were both very young men, both very tragic deaths, both very funny men, both very well-educated men. And one died a horrible death, and one died a glorious death. And the difference is that I found that the one who died a glorious death believed he was going someplace else. And then I thought, well, let's find out about someplace else. Let's find out what they're like.
So there is a sense in these two deaths that the idea of a someplace else, an idea of a soul, of a larger connection, actually is of benefit to us as we go through the transition.
Yes, tremendous. All the difference in the world, all the difference. If only because it gives hope. And the blackness and the nothingness, and I'll be alone and there'll be no one, and I'm going to a place I don't know, if I'm going anywhere, I'm disappearing. All of those horrible fears stop. And there's more.
Of course, many people consider themselves to be realists about it. I know I went through a phase where I figured when you're dead, it's all over, there's nothing more. I can accept that, and it's kind of a sense of existential strength to not want to have the crutch that the religious myths offer when it comes to facing one's annihilation.
Well, it's not all a crutch. In my studies, it's not all a lot of laughs on the other side. There are judgments, and there are harsh judgments, and there are different phases of it, and depending on which system, they're monsters, or they're angels, or they're... it's not all laughs. It's not such a crutch.